So good morning. It's another day, another day in lockdown, another morning, another Friday morning, and another strange day. I cannot remember. I cannot remember a bank holiday on a Friday. So where the days have become very confusing during our lockdown, now here we are with an even more confusing thing of having a bank holiday, which is the May bank holiday, on a Friday. And why is that? Because we're celebrating VE Day, 75 years on, an incredible day of victory, which at times during the war seemed to be completely impossible that it would ever come right. And I recall, well, I wasn't there because I wasn't born then, but I recall the stories of the king calling the nation to prayer, to bring an end, to plead with God for him to bring an end in victory against the terrible things that the Nazis were doing in Europe. And God heard and answered the prayer. And there are many stories of the most amazing things that happened during the Second World War. And God is the God who gives. I was reading this verse in Romans 8:31. If God is for us, who is against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, will he not also give us all things with him? God is the giver, the great giver. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. God is the great giver. He's always giving us. He gives us small things and big things. We cannot outgive God. God is the great giver. And thinking about today as VE Day, if you get the chance, don't avoid watching some of these documentaries which tell us about some of the things, the awful things that were done in the Second World War, and because the more you know about it, the more you are astounded that God gave the victory, and that we came out of that. Otherwise, our lives would be very different today if the outcome had been different. But I was thinking, those of you who were with me yesterday, you will have heard my little story about Poirot, the character of Agatha Christie, and David Suchet's account of the fact that Poirot read his Bible every night. And I'm enjoying this book. I read some more of it yesterday. And he tells in quite detail the chronological order in which he started to record Poirot, and how the first series were recorded. Something, I think it was 1989. Recorded in 88 and shown between January and March in 89. And this verse here, now you have to follow. My mind is all flighty this morning. I do ask for your forgiveness and your forbearance. But this verse that says, will he not also give us all things with him? My experience, life experience of God is that he is concerned and involved somehow or other, amazingly, in the very, very fine details of our lives. He actually cares and seems to care about giving us pleasure as his children. And this is astonishing to me, that God, who made everything and is so amazing, so wonderful, should actually notice anything about me, let alone care for me and give me things to give me pleasure. Things that would go over another person's head and would mean nothing to them, but to me mean a great deal. Now, would you believe? Would you? I'm sure you will, because I'm telling you, this is what happened. Yesterday evening, we were browsing on, we have Sky TV, and I was browsing through. I had recorded a Poirot much later in the series, Poirot, with David Suchet, and was going to watch it. And I looked to see what was the earliest episode that I could find, and found that on Sky, every single episode is available. Now that's rare. You know, if you watch something like, I don't know, The Yorkshire Vet, you can watch the most recent series. You can't watch the first series, it's not available. But with this Poirot, every single episode is available. So last night, I had the joy, a day after reading about it, to watch the very first episode that David Suchet recorded as Poirot. And I could see in his acting the hesitancy and the nervousness he had. And I could see, having watched it, why he thought it would never go beyond one series, because it seemed to him very tame compared to Morse and other detective stories that were running on TV at the same time. But bear with me, because to me it was amazing that the very thing that I was thinking about in the secular world part of my life, God had given me something to give me pleasure. To give me pleasure that I could watch that very first episode when it was fresh in my mind from the book I'm reading. God is the God of detail, and he doesn't get it wrong. He doesn't get his timing wrong. He doesn't get... how many coincidences have you experienced in your life when things just fit into place perfectly? When you meet someone just the right time for something to be a consequence of that. God is the God of the detail. God planned everything about the life of Jesus to such perfect detail, and all the foretelling in the Old Testament, all the prophecies are perfectly fulfilled in Jesus. And from that we can say that all the prophecies about Jesus coming again will be fulfilled in just as perfect a detail. But just like with the first prophecies of his first coming, there are verses in the Old Testament you would never associate with the Messiah, because they come in the middle of something completely different. And yet, with hindsight, you can see that they fit perfectly what Jesus did. And I know for my life, lots and lots of very small details matter for me as a person, as an individual. And God so generously gives us things to give us pleasure in our lives. He is so generous to us. If God is for us, who is against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, will he not also give us all things with him? God is giving. He's a giver. He's the great giver. And we can trust him that when we need something to encourage us, or we need something to build us up, or something to lift us up, he's ahead of us. He's ahead of us to give us just the very thing that's going to give us delight and pleasure as we look to him for every detail of our lives. And so I pray that today, something in what happens today will remind you of how much God loves you as an individual. And perhaps if you look back at your timeline again, I don't know how you got on with your timeline, or with your psalm, or with all the other things I've suggested we do, that as you think about God and spend time with him today, he'll remind you of some of the wonderful things he's done in your life that wouldn't have made any difference to me, wouldn't have mattered to me, but they mattered to you, because he knows you through and through, and he loves you, and he gets every detail right in his love for you. So have a great day. Whatever God gives you to do today, may you be richly blessed in it, and I'll see you tomorrow.